Josh Allen's prime is being wasted by Brandon Beane. Today, I'll be breaking down how Brandon Beane's failed draft picks, disastrous free agent signings, and refusal to replace Stefon Diggs following his trade from the Bills have crippled the Bills, and why Buffalo keeps collapsing when it matters the most. From the Von Miller contract disaster to Joey Bosa disappearing in the second half, the first round buffs and whiffs on receivers, Brandon Beane's mistakes have drained the roster around Josh Allen, and once again those holes have showed up in the playoffs. Another wasted year of Josh Allen's prime. The Bills were supposed to be the next dynasty. Josh Allen was supposed to be the unstoppable force who finally brought a Lombardi to Buffalo. And Brandon Beane, he was the guy who was supposed to build this team around him. Somewhere along the way, something snapped. Because the Bills didn't collapse overnight, the downfall was slow, subtle, and hidden behind one thing: Josh Allen's greatness. For years, fans believed that the Bills had one of the best rosters in the NFL. A top 5 defense, an explosive offense, and a GM who looked like he could do no wrong. But here's the truth. Brandon Beane's early success masked long-term structural failures. The Bills were winning games because Josh Allen was erasing mistakes, not because the roster was elite. So if the roster wasn't actually great, what was hiding the flaws? The answer is simple. Josh Allen was the band-aid, the duct tape, the super glue, the miracle worker, and Superman, but no quarterback, not even Josh Allen, can cover for a front office forever. This is where the story shifts, because if you want to know how a GM wastes a superstar quarterback's prime, you start with the draft. And Brandon Beane's draft record, it's a problem, and a big one. So which picks actually set the Buffalo Bills back? The two most notable picks that set the Bills back were Kaiir Elam and Keon Coleman. First things first, we have to talk about Kaiir Elam. He was supposed to be the shutdown corner opposite of Tre'Davious White, but instead he struggled to learn the scheme, he got benched, and became a liability. He was a first-round pick who didn't get on the field and was outperformed by a 6th-round pick in Christian Benford, which ultimately led to his trade to the Dallas Cowboys in a late draft pick swap. And lastly, Keon Coleman. Coleman had upside, but drafting a raw developmental receiver when your franchise QB is already in his prime and in need of a wide receiver 1, that's a philosophical failure. Josh Allen needed a polished separator, a route technician, and a day 1 impact weapon, and Keon Coleman has been all but that. When the draft fails, which should be the main way that you build a roster, free agency becomes your lifeline. But for Beane, it has become a graveyard. The Von Miller contract was a catastrophic gamble. Brandon Beane handed out a massive contract to a 33-year-old pass rusher coming off of major injuries, and it was supposed to be the move that finally pushed Buffalo over the top. Instead, Von Miller tore his ACL 8 games into the season and became a liability when he came back to play for the Bills. More recently, the Bills signed Joey Bosa from the Los Angeles Chargers after years of injury issues. Bosa did flash early, then vanished in the second half of the season. No sacks, no impact, and no presence in the playoff. Another expensive swing and another miss. And now we get to the wide receiver failed signings. Curtis Samuel was supposed to be a versatile weapon in this offense, and Joshua Palmer was supposed to be the reliable chain mover. Neither became a difference maker, neither elevated the offense, and neither filled the void that was left by Stefon Diggs. That leads to the biggest free agent failure of them all: never replacing Stefon Diggs. Brandon Beane traded away Josh Allen's only true wide receiver 1 when the drama was getting too much, but the big failure was not trading him away, but rather not replacing him. He didn't even replace him with a star, a borderline star, or no one even close. The Bills lost Diggs and hoped that a receiver by committee approach would work, but it did not, and Josh Allen is now paying the price. I want to mention just how bad the wide receivers have been for the Buffalo Bills, especially this year. In last night's playoff game against the Denver Broncos, Josh Allen was only 5 of 14 for 36 yards with 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions when targeting his wide receivers, whereas when he targeted his tight ends and running backs, he was 20 for 25 passing. Every year, the Bills enter the playoffs with hope. Every year, they leave with heartbreak. Fans keep asking, why does this team always fall short? Because playoff football exposes roster construction. You can't hide a lack of elite pass rush, no true wide receiver 1, no depth, no physicality, and no star power outside of Josh Allen. You can't hide a lack of pass rush for the 6th consecutive season, no true wide receiver 1 following the departure of Stefon Diggs, and bad depth which you have had on this roster for years. When injuries arise on this Bills roster, they always go back to old veterans who used to play for the Bills, and just recently, Dane Jackson was elevated from the practice squad who the Bills drafted in 2020, and on his 1 snap last night, he gave up a 26-yard touchdown to give the Denver Broncos the lead with 55 seconds left. The Bills collapse every year because they don't have the star power outside of Josh Allen, and that's not on him, that is on Brandon Beane. Josh Allen is a generational talent, but the Bills have been asking him to be Superman. They want him to do everything for this offense, and that leads to the question, why hasn't Brandon Beane built a roster that takes the pressure off of Allen? Brandon Beane keeps building a roster that relies on Josh Allen and not one that supports him. The Chiefs built around Patrick Mahomes. The Bengals built around Joe Burrow. The Ravens built around Lamar Jackson, and the 49ers built around Brock Purdy. However, the Bills built around Josh Allen's ability to erase mistakes. and that's not sustainable. Josh Allen is in his prime right now. Not in 5 years, not in 10, right now, and the Bills are wasting it. The roster is aging, the cap is tight, the AFC is as loaded as it's ever been, and the margin for error is shrinking. Is it too late? Not yet, but it's getting close. Here's the truth. Josh Allen can win a Super Bowl, but not with this roster and not with this front office. The Buffalo Bills must fire Brandon Beane if they want any chance of competing for a Super Bowl. Every single philosophy that Brandon Beane has had about building this Bills roster has completely failed and backfired and has led to these constant playoff collapses. If nothing changes, Bills fans will look back and say, we had Josh Allen and we wasted him. But if Terry Pegula fires Brandon Beane and brings in a more young, aggressive GM who will build this roster around Josh Allen, the window won't be closed and things can change.